Hey everyone, Ryan O'Shea here, and I think I've heard the most incredible story ever. And it's about the Super Bowl. More specifically, it's about how this guy, Rick Steigerwald, snuck into every Steelers game during the 78-79 season. And when they made it to the Super Bowl, he knew he was going there as well. And it ends up with him impersonating a player and getting interviewed by the media and so much more. And when I first heard this story, I knew I had to make a video. So here's Rick.
When it came time for the Super Bowl, my brother called me up and said, hey, you want to go to the Super Bowl? And I was like, yeah, I want to go to the Super Bowl. So we go to Miami, we're driving down, we run to Winnebago. I knew it was going to be a challenge to get in the Orange Bowl because, number one, we've never been there before. And so I made a grappling hook. I'm a steam fitter by trade. I weld a lot. And I made a grappling hook. I had the rope, the knots in it, the whole 9 yards. We had looked up what the Orange Bowl was made of, and we knew that we needed to throw it at least 15 feet for it to hook onto something to climb in. And so we get down there, we're milling around, and my brother's like, hey, what are we going to do? And I said, hey, I'm going to walk over the morning of the Super Bowl. I'm going to walk over and kind of put this bag with the grappling hook in the bushes there, so I'm not carrying around all day, and I'm going to check out a place for us to get in. And also I was checking out, what it looked like cop-wise, see if any of the cops were going to come around. Well, here they had the cops on horses down there. And so I timed how long it took them to get around the stadium. They were doing circles around the stadium, and I timed them how long we had to be able to get in there like that. I was standing there, and I'm in shock because I ran into a friend of mine from Pittsburgh, and he goes, hey, and we were standing there bullcrap, and the cops went by on the horses, and the next thing you know, 20 guys ran over to the rain ring of the Orange Bowl and start popping each other up on the Orange Bowl, throwing them up. And we looked at each other, and we were like, we better go. So we threw the grappling hook in the weeds right there with the bag. I'd like to know who has that today, because that's definitely a collector's item. We run over, didn't know these people from Cake and Soap, popped us up on the ring of the roof. Now we're up there, and people are trying to climb 12 feet of diamond tufted fence, which is very hard on the hands. Anybody in construction would know that. So now the cops made their way back around, and now we got a crowd of people down there watching us. He was like, okay, come on down, like before you hurt yourself. I was not going back down. And there was a couple people hanging there that were hurting, and they let go and fell down the rest of the way. I made it to the top, and my buddy came up behind me. He said, well, if he can make it, he came up behind me, only he got stuck there. So I had to go back over and drop my leg down so that he could grab onto my leg. And as I'm pulling him back up, like pulling myself over the fence, as I'm doing that, two older gentlemen from Pittsburgh, they ran over to me and they said, you need a hand. They reached over, pulled him in, we get in, we thanked him, we hugged him. He says, where do you want to sit? And I said, I'm sitting on a 50. I don't know about you, but I'm sitting directly on the 50. He said, okay. Now the whole stadium's filling up, and I'm sitting in seats that movie stars and NFL coaches and a lot of people are sitting in. Anita Bryant was sitting right in front of me. Don Shula and his whole family was sitting across from me. Just a bunch of stars. And we're talking to them like every day. They're excited to be there. We're excited. The sun's out. It's great. And the next thing you know, now it's getting closer to game time. And there's still nobody in this row. And we can't figure it out. They're getting ready to do the national anthem and everything. And all of a sudden, two people sit at the very end. Now, you're talking 40 seats, I think. All of a sudden, one of the guys comes walking up, and he says, hey, you have tickets for them seats? And I said, who are you, the ticket taker? And he's like, no. He goes, I just want to tell you, like, my company from New York bought this whole row, and nobody else is going to make it. They're too drunk in the hotel room, and you can have the seats. I said, hey, thanks, my man. We're hugging each other. We're watching the game, and what a great game. And I'm offering seats to everybody. Myron Cope was there. We were talking with him. So now it's getting near the end of the game. My buddy says to me, hey, we should get down and get the game football. And I was like, that's a great idea. So we work our way down to the fence, and there's a lot of cops standing down there, facing the crowd. But a lot of them were already interested in the game, and they kept turning their backs. As I slipped through the fencing to get onto the sidelines, one of the cops said, oh, okay, you're okay, go ahead, go. He thought I was a ball boy. I go past him, he stopped my friend. I wasn't stopping there. I went all the way up, and just then the countdown had already started. I ran out on the field when it was ending. Everybody was going crazy, and everybody's running in every direction. And when I go on the field, when I get there, there's no ball. I'm in the middle of the field. There's no ball. But I'm looking, and I see all the Steelers running underneath the stadium, and I thought, that's where I'm going. So I just jogged in with them, ran all the way in. They were going in the locker room. I started going in the locker room. All of a sudden, one of the security guys stopped everybody and said, "You're the media. We'll let you in a couple minutes. We'll let these guys get settled, and we'll let you in." So I'm standing there, and I'm kind of like frozen. I'm in the middle of all these reporters with cameras. As soon as he opened that door and said, "Okay, we're going to let the media in," I grabbed somebody's wire and just held onto his wire like I was helping him. Boom, I go in. I get inside. Next thing you know, I look up, and there's Terry Bradshaw. He's already up on a podium. I walk over. I shake his hand. I tell him that was the best goddamn game I ever seen in my life. He's shaking my hand, but he's looking down at me like, "Who are you?" You know? I see my neighbor, Jack Delaplane. And so he's looking at me like with this look like, he couldn't believe I was in there. So anyhow, I walked down and sat beside him. The next thing you know, a flood of reporters come running over, and they're going, Rick, can we do an interview with you?" And I'm thinking, okay, I just won the Golden Gloves like last year. I don't know. I said, I leaned over to Delaplane and whispered to him, "Do they know me?" And he goes, "No. They think you're Rick Moser. You're in his locker, number 39. And they're interviewing me. I just said to Delaplane, "Watch this." And they're interviewing me about backing up Franco Harris and all this other stuff. You know, how's it feel, you know, and all this stuff. And what'd you think of the game today? And I'm just making shit up as I go along. And I just said, yeah, Chuck Noll planned it that way. We pretty much planned everything that happened there. We pretty much planned it, and we just followed the plan. And that's how we won, you know. And they're like, yeah, that's great. Delaplane's looking at me like he can't believe this. And he's just shaking his head and laughing. One of the reporters said to me, "Rick," he says, he said, "Hey, we don't want to hold you up. We know you probably want to take a shower." Never thought of that. Looked over, seen the locker room, everybody going in and out. There was a towel boy there. There was a cart with shampoo and towels and everything on it. And I said, "Hey, thanks a lot." They said, "But can we come back later after you get a shower?" "Yeah, sure." And finish the interview. Sure, you can do that. I looked at Delaplane. He said, "You are not." I said, "Yes, I am." So anyhow, took all my clothes off, hung them up on Rick Moser's locker, and I walk in, and if I'm not mistaken, I was at the shower beside L.C. Greenwood, who was 6'8", and you know, he's scrubbing his head, and there was shampoo on the dish right there, and I said, "Hey, can I get some shampoo?" And he kind of looks down at me like this, and I said, "Oh, Rick Steigerwald, Chuck Noll's nephew." So I ran that by him, and he bought it, and he said, "Oh, yeah, sure, go ahead, right ahead. You know, blah, blah, how you doing, you know, blah, blah, blah." Now I'm having a conversation with everybody in the locker room because they think I'm Chuck Noll's nephew. So as it turns out, get all showered off, blah, 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 walk out, kid hands me the towel, you know, the whole 9 yards. I walk over. A lot of Steelers are gone. I walk over, and I'm standing on the bench, and I'm drying off. All them reporters come back up. They flooded me again. They go, Rick. Now I'm naked. And I got a towel around me, and I'm drying with another towel, plenty of towels. And the next thing you know, out of the corner of my eye, I see Sidney Thornton in the background. He's pacing back and forth, and he doesn't look happy. And so I don't want to make eye contact with him because I know it's got something to do with me. So as it turns out, it was about me. So all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he yells, "Who the fuck is that?" And I said, I thought, uh-oh, it's over now. You know, I kind of put my head down. I said, "Okay, guys, thanks a lot, you know, blah, blah, blah." And I'm trying to get rid of them because I know it's coming to an end. I want to get my gear on, and I want to go. So they're still asking me questions and all that. All of a sudden, he calls over a guy by the name of Tony Parisi, who was the equipment manager for the Steelers at the time. And it's a little Italian guy, and he comes over to him, and I see them talking. I'm like frantically trying to get rid of these guys and possibly get my stuff on. So as it turns out, Tony Parisi comes over, and he goes, "Hey, who the fuck are you?" I said, "Who are you?" And he said, "I'm Tony Parisi. I'm the equipment manager." And he said, "And you're no Steeler." Well, all of a sudden, I look over, and all these reporters are slithering back into the crowd. And he said, "I'm going to get security." And I said, "Get a couple of them." So here, unbeknownst to me, the security they had for the locker room was the University of Miami football team front line. So none of them was under 6'7". So I'm still standing on the locker, and two guys with orange jackets come over, and they're young kids, and they're smiling. So I know I'm okay already. They're smiling. And he's frantic about getting me thrown out. naked. He said, throw him out just like that, just like he is. The bigger of the two kids turned around to me. He said, whoa, what a move, you know? He said, that was cool. So anyhow, he said, go ahead, put your clothes on. Put my clothes on. They walk me to the door. I get to the door. And they both slapped me 5 right there, and they're still laughing about what happened. I walk out the door, and I'm kind of waving to them from the door. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. I turn around. There's a line of people all the way out from underneath the stadium into the parking lot. I'm like, uh-oh. So I go out there, and everybody's yelling, Rick, 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 can I have your autograph? Can I have your autograph? So I thought, sure. And I started giving autographs, but I was writing Rick Stagg instead of Rick Moser. And then I go over to this side and write them, and I'm writing them all the way out. I get to the really nice bus. The driver opens the door, and once he opens the door, I step up on a bus. There's a crowd of people everywhere. I step up on a bus, and I'm looking back at everybody like that. And everybody's like, who's that? Who is that? And I just look, I said, that was the best fucking game I ever seen in my life. To all the Steelers that were on that bus. And I said, thanks a lot. And I got back off the bus, and I walked through the crowd. I walked back over to my Winnebago. My brothers were all in there by that time. I think a lot of them had to watch it on TV at the local bar. They did not get in. I walked in, and my brother said, where are you at? Where you been? We were looking everywhere for you. I said, you're not going to believe where I was just at. I just took a shower with the Steelers. And he said, no, you didn't. I said, smell my hair. It was soaking wet. I was clean. He said, son of a bitch. So he still was skeptical about that. But the next day, a reporter had wrote that story, a brief about it. And he called my dad from a payphone down there. And my dad said, you know anything about anybody getting in a locker room and taking a shower with the Steelers? And he goes, that's what he believed, that I did it. And so he told my dad that and blah, blah, blah. So now we come home. It's victorious. Everybody's happy. The Winnebago, it barely made it home. Somehow I get contacted by a guy that wrote for the press. And he was a writer, and his name was Bill Knapp. He knew me because he had wrote about me from the Golden Gloves, you know, the different times I won championships. He contacted me and said, Rick, Lil Bird told me that you're the guy that took a shower with the Steelers after, the Super Bowl. And I said, yep. So he said, hey, can I do the story? And I said, we can talk about it. So I met him at the local bar. We sat down and talked about it. He did the story. But if I'm not mistaken, he won the Golden Quill for that story. So with that, I was blessed to be able to be a part of the Steelers, because you got to remember, back then, everybody felt a part of the Steelers. You wouldn't be able to do that in this day and age. The security and everything that they have at stadiums. It was a simpler time, and I'm just blessed that I was able to do that.